think we can start, Petru.
Yes, okay. So probably I should speak even less than I spoke in the introductory session in introducing this breakout discussion. So first of all, I was trying hard to make a summary of a sort of bird's eye view on the landscape of learning in the United Nations systems. Actually, as following the practice of joint inspection unit, we have a lot of dissection and analysis of the current practices and policies. That was, this is a part of our work. And then we have a very substantial analysis of the existing options in terms of e-learning platforms. So, and personally, to make my report credible and relevant, I took more than 20 e-learning courses on all platforms that were enumerated by the organizations that they're using. So somehow I don't only have a view of as an official, as a manager, but also a view as a user of the system. So I'll be ready to. A report will be at some point in time in June publicly available, and we can continue dialogue at that point in time. But in the meantime, I'm ready to respond to any curiosity you might have about why and how is e-learning used in the United Nations system. If not, I may. Do you expect me to continue talking? Okay. So before I hear any question, I would say also that the third main part of our report, and you have to have in mind the vocation of the Joint Inspection Unit as a system-wide oversight body. We are unique in our way, in the sense that we do not. We try to take the best and use the best of the experiences in the United Nations system, and also to make recommendations to the entire system. So, and we managed to produce more than 20 recommendations in general, and some of them are crucial in the sense of creating. I would call it, in journalistic terms, United Nations of learning, in the sense that we see three major vectors that can help us to act as a system, and that the first of them is a better and a more systematic use of e-learning options. I think that the landscape is very rich, and it is let's say the panoply of options that we are having online is also very rich, and some of the programs are easy accessible. So if we have all these ingredients, and the ingredients should, as I said, contain an institutional environment where learning is encouraged and recognized. This sounds obvious, but it's not like at the university. There is no systematic and institutionalized way to recognize and to reward, at least symbolically, the effort of learning. And this is why then there is a sort of a conservative stand, in the sense that people may expect, may do what is coming as an opportunity for their progressing career, not necessarily in acquiring more professional expertise, I would say, and the effort, the individual efforts, which is essential. The other two vectors that we take care in the report are by institutional matter. We have a training hub in the system, which is the Staff College based in Turin and in Bonn, and also we'd like to, we propose to have a system-wide learning organizational framework in which principles and objectives of learning in the United Nations system are to be defined.
We have one first question from Jenny K, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, otherwise apologies. It said, I'm curious about the possibilities of group learning online with the UN system. I'm familiar with the learning platforms, but these are individual courses. So if you can elaborate a bit more on that.
Well, first of all, we do have already an entity which is supposed to offer learning programs that are relevant for the entire system. And those forms of learning, whether they are face-to-face or blended courses or purely e-learning, they already imply participation of people from all United Nations organizations that are interested. Then there are also here and there initiative of producing joint curricula for some courses, and all these they have an embedded, almost all of them, they have an embedded feature that implies interaction and collaboration among individuals. But again, I have to say it once more, the individual is the key. When you are in a real classroom, the teacher, the professor may observe the behavior, the interest of the participants in some way, mostly visually, and then by trying to ask questions, particular questions, etc. In the e-learning, there are such options, but again, you are behind your screen. You have to do learning at your own pace, so you might not be necessarily synchronized with the others. So the responsibility of the individual is crucial, I would say.
Thank you, Petro. We have another question from Dragana. She's asking, what is the average length and difficulty level of online courses taken by the UN staff? And we have a second question from Nigar. I'm curious about what does the UN also provide certificates and recognitions? Yeah, these are the two questions we have so far.
Thank you very much. The question number one about the difficulty, I would say that there is nothing that distinguishes between the United Nations learners and other learners, as long as they follow practices developed in the learning industry, or they use the e-learning platforms provided by various service provider. This is why, and this kind of perception, you cannot have it necessarily from a managerial point of view. I won't mention here the specific platforms of Diplo, because Diplo for me is an example where the learning manager can come into the classroom, inspect the classroom, see how much time people used for that particular courses, to what extent they were involved, what was the level of their responses in tested and quizzes, etc., etc. And on learning, we use the existing means. So we know that, for instance, on LinkedIn, there are some quizzes at the end of some module and chapters. On edX, and that again, I repeat, I speak from my personal experience. On edX, you have a more sophisticated and tough system of passing a test after each module, and at the end you might have an exam, which is quite difficult. I have to confess that it happened to me. To have to repeat the exam once or twice until I pass it, because it was not that obvious. So there are different levels of difficulty. The Corp Academy also offers a number of courses, and you have to pass it, and you have only two options to respond correctly. So your score will be diminished as you miss some good responses from the beginning. So there is a great variety of options to test the knowledge of the learners. In terms of certification, well, that is an issue which I dealt with very, very thoroughly in my report. practically, the United Nations provides certificates only for the courses that they organize themselves. The courses organized by the organization themselves. They have a system of certifying that. But if I'm taking a certificate from another platform, and an outside platform, unfortunately, that is not recognized, and I cannot upload it in my own records within my own organization. And that is also valid for organizations that have a sort of more contractual relationship with the learning suppliers. For instance, UNDP, one of the learning platform by UNDP is LinkedIn. So you have you can get your certificate on LinkedIn, but this is not necessarily reflected in your learning record. So here is an area where we proposed a number of recommendations to improve the situation and to have a wider recognition of learning effort, whether it is done within the organization, outside the organizations, and that is should be somehow reflected in the e-performance proceedings that are valid in the United Nations system. They are quite sophisticated. I hope it responded the interest.
Thank you, Olaf. Sorry, Pedro. We have Olaf that has just raised his hand. Olaf, yes, please, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. First of all, Mr. Dimitriou, thanks a lot from my side and also to the DiploFoundation of organizing it. I'm working for the European Union, actually in one of the training teams. So I'm organizing trainings, basically soft skills and management trainings for our managers. And my question is a little bit, could you explain a little bit how you in the UN system, also as a kind of global organization, kind of identify the needs of your staff? So how do you kind of figure out what staff, in that case, I would be particularly interested in terms of management skills, what they need, and how far do you have certain guidelines from the top or kind of bottom-up requests from people what they need? If you could elaborate a little bit on that, that would be very interesting for me, because I'm not so familiar with the UN system. I'm a little bit familiar with the EU system, but not the UN system. And thanks a lot for organizing this exchange.
Thank you, Olaf. So let me make one point at the beginning. So unlike the European Commission or the European Council, which is supposed to be one single unique body, institutional body, in the United Nations system is a bit different. Our reports are based on the search and analysis of information from 28 organizations. Those 28 organizations are very various they might be rich and famous, like UNDP, like UNICEF. There might be smaller technical organizations like World Meteorological Organization, the International Civil Aviation, etc. Or you might have organizations that are working with a very specialized and sometimes confidential kind of learning, as it is the International Atomic Energy. So in terms of how we assess the learning needs, there are a plethora of different practices in the United Nations system. Some are more advanced, more systematic, more policy-based. Some are more spontaneous and I would say sometimes even chaotic. And in some cases, simply the market is not that good. The supply is small, so the demand, then there is not a sophisticated need for learning, for needs learning assessment. But what we did was indeed to take each practices, analyze them, and make proposals. So there will be more in the report, Olaf. So I would have you in mind when it's done, to get into more substance and more information about it. Marco, if there is no other question on
I think we have one last from John Min, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. From the UN Secretary side, we are using MS Teams and Skype for Business, which do not allow to create interactive methods and virtual breakout rooms, unlike Mural, Miro, and Zoom. In this regard, with the current tools, MS Teams and Skype for Business, are there any suggestions on how we can get the most out of it from the existing platforms that we have to make sessions and webinars more interactive and engaging in the group? I think it's type of a question, what we can do with what we have. What can we do with what we have?
Well, I think the question is coming from a colleague, so I'm also aware about the limitation of MS Teams. Practically, actually, the experience is very new since this COVID crisis. So I would say that there are a variety of platforms. They are not necessarily used as such for interactive learning, but there are platforms available. They are known among those learning experts, and I can tell you that there are many really good experts in learning. They are informed with the state-of-the-art new technique and the methods and tools in the system. So I would say that technology is no longer a problem. What is a problem is to have a systematic and a clearly targeted policy on e-learning, and then technology will be there to serve us. So far, the tendency is rather to be technology-driven. We choose platforms because they happens we happen to know more about those platforms. But we have even a very specific proposal, my dear colleague from the Secretariat, and that is to make a choice based on very clear criteria when we are choosing LMS, a learning management system platform, and ERP, enterprise resource planning, to make sure, for instance, that they are compatible, so that some of the problems that I mentioned, like lack of recognition, lack of portability of the certificates, etc., is also solved and reflected in the. So I cannot give you a magic bullets response. What is the platform? What I know is that there are platforms, but we need to have a policy and the strategy on learning, and then we'll find the best technological means available.
Thank you, Pedro. For the moment, I don't see any other questions being raised. I'm not sure if we are about to end the time for the...
If I have 30 seconds more, I should mention one other thing, which is the evaluation of learning, the impact of learning. That is a very problematic issue, and I found it that is problematic not necessarily not only in the United Nations system. It's problematic anywhere. So we somehow imported from the private sector, from the industry, some methodology conceived in academic circles. The most famous is Kirkpatrick 4-level model of evaluation. But as it seems to be the situation, sometimes there are to reach the level of evaluation that theoretically we should aspire, we need more resources than we allocate to the learning process in itself. So this is yet another area where we should find ways of really determining the impact of our learning. And there are practices, none of them probably is perfect, but we also made a proposal in the sense that using the e-learning technologies in a way so as to have an embedded obligation for the learners to come back in 2 years' time, or 1 year time, or 3 years' time, to describe how and what was the impact of their learning. This is possible, and we proposed as an experiment with a sort of provisional certification. So you will be attested that you completed the course. Your managers will take note of that, but you won't have the final certificate until you participate in this last stage of learning, which is the evaluation.
Thank you, Pedro. This is very interesting. Is it a proposition that you have put forth because you've seen it applied in other systems and it's already used, or it's something you've just come up with that you're just suggesting to implement for the future?
Look, in some cases there is an invitation to apply existing good practices. In other cases, there are conclusions that we draw from the interaction. We don't have time to explain, but we have a very sophisticated. It's not our research. It's not a desk research. We interview people. We study documentation. We ask questions to organization, and we check the validity of our assumptions. So none of the recommendations that we are making. I mean, the first condition for our recommendation to be taken seriously, because they are not mandatory, you cannot impose to anyone, is for them to be credible and realistic. And I can swear that all the recommendations we made in this report, they are realistic. But there is a need a little bit to change the lenses through which we see the learning, and there is a need to fight a little bit the inertia. Learning was not on the top of the attention of any manager, of any governing bodies, and that is a little bit paradoxical, because the United Nations, unlike the private sector, does not sell goods and services. They don't measure the learning by increase in turnover or in the number of clients. We have a different kind of proposing services to the member states. So learning is very important. Knowledge is our main resource, and knowledge is very important, and learning should be paid the attention it deserves. So it's a matter of shifting the strategical vision of learning. And I'm very much, it is the first time that, I see literally a description of the cliche that said that the crisis is also an opportunity. I think this crisis, COVID crisis, was an opportunity to see the virtues of e-learning and the potential that it has, and it is not yet explored. Thank you very much. It seems that we have to go back to the main session.
Yes, if you have nothing to add, I think we still have a minute and a half. We can also leave by ourselves. We can click leave breakout room on the bottom right corner, or we can just wait for this minute to pass.
I might add something. United Nations has this perception of being a bureaucratic organization, and I cannot contradict, and no one will contradict you. We are based on a quite rigid intergovernmental structure. We have to report for how we use our money. So in time we accumulated a number of constraints and restrictions. That it's not our fault that we look as being bureaucratic. So the United Nations is by far not an agile organization. You know the concept of agility in terms of organization. I think that e-learning is one step towards such a development, meaning that we could, by learning together, we could come to a situation on some point in time will be more agile and more flexible and more adaptable as an organizations to the needs of the working environment of the United Nations.